What's going on, everybody? It's your boy RT, aka Teezy, and welcome back to a new episode of Keeping Up with Teezy. So, sorry I've been gone for so long, even though it's only been, 2 weeks since I had uploaded a podcast. So, last week, I had decided to take a little break from it for a while because I had spent time with my fiance and all that good stuff, and then trying to figure out a topic what I was going to talk about on this show. Because I thought I had it at one point, but it is, I feel like it didn't trying to register to, you know, what y'all really like and all that stuff. So, but I'm back. You know, I feel refreshed and everything, so we good to go. And as well, I want to give a shout out to all my subscribers. You know, keep, thank y'all for y'all support, and you know, just keep just keep the views going. Just keep them going and support the movement. You know, and yeah. Y'all know y'all could follow me on, Keeping Up with TZ on Facebook and Instagram, of course, as well as on the two, Spotify and Anchor. You know, but I want to give a shout out to all my subscribers that have been listening and peeping my stuff and whatnot. So I thank y'all for that. Sorry y'all if I sound a little shaky. Feel like it's been the first time. Forgive my language, y'all. I feel like I just came doing this shit unprepared. Like, but like I said, I feel refreshed. I got a lot of things that's going on and a whole bunch of shit I gotta talk about and everything. So I think y'all gonna like this show for real. So over the last couple of days when I was on break, like I was trying to debate on what I should talk about on this show for this week. And it was kind of, like I said, it was kind of difficult for me to even try to come up with a good topic to reel people in and all that stuff. But I think the one that hit me the most is like, that one I'm going to talk about right now is like the evolution of hip hop. Like music I used to listen to growing up, comparing it from then to now. Ooh, I needed that. Yeah, so that's gonna be the topic. Like everybody should know how. Everybody should know where hip hop started from and all that stuff. In the Bronx, of course. Shout outs to them. Like I got mad respect and love for the culture and everything that was originated at that time. Because of course, DJ Kool Herc, he was like the pioneer of hip hop. Like he started that shit for everybody to get on this platform to this day. We ought to salute him and thank him for that. Even though even though it's not like how it used to be now, but you always gotta pay homage to people who started the movement, you know, as a way to express ourselves. And that's how I always see it, like in hip hop, like just express like how you feel, and Never be scared of what you want to say, what you want to talk about, what you want to do in life. Like that's to me, that's all like hip hop is all about, man. Like you just gotta think outside the box sometimes, man. Like especially when you're trying to promote yourself and all that. Like it'll get you to reel people in and just to have that view of what you went through in their eyes. You know, like that's how I always see it, man. Like, you know, and yeah, 'cause I always been a big fan. I always been like a big hip hop head since I was like probably about 5 or 6. Especially at that time. I was born in '91, so at that time, like in the '90s, of course, all you had was like Death Row, Bad Boy. That was like to me, there was like the only two labels that was like heard of the most. Like, like to me, I always been like a big Death Row head, like especially when like Snoop, Dre, and Pac was out at that time, man. Like that's why I really feel like they took over the first early part of the '90s and shit. Hold on a second. Damn helicopter. But yeah, cause especially like the first early part of the '90s, like Death Row was that label. Like everybody, you know, was in that shit. Like even Bad Boy, man. Like that was the label too. Like you had Big, Craig Mack, Puff, Mace. All those guys that like, you know, paved the way for everybody. Just to have them do their own thing. And that's what I liked about, you know, early hip hop in them days, like especially like in Fuse at the time, like I was like big into Fuse like that. Even though I was like too little to, you know, to know what happened, all that stuff, but that was like until like I grew up like later on and all that such. And just like basically how the origin of like how their fuse started and all that shit. Like that's what got people's attention. It could be a good way, and it could be bad. Mostly bad. You know, 'cause especially around that time frame, it got ugly to the point where like ooh, we lost two of the greatest rappers that ever existed in this planet. You know, and I was more into Pac more than I did Biggie. You know, because Pac, like, he was the one that like I got into his music like early on, because it's like he was like out of all the rappers, it's like when you listen to his stuff, it's like he actually talking to you. You know, and he just keeps it real. Like ain't no faking a funk about it. And, like no matter what people say, like he was speaking some shit that nobody would even dare to say. Even to this day, like motherfuckers won't can't handle that shit, man. Especially when you like under the public eye and being surrounded by the higher ups, should I say? You know, like it's because what I learned about like especially in the music industry and all that stuff, like especially when you talking about like you know certain stuff that people won't actually relate as far as like materialistic stuff like buying this or what you got on, like you know none of that none of that stuff don't even impress me like that. you know, because, I'm always about, the realness of the lyrics of what they say. Because to me, like, when it comes to rap and like poetry and all that stuff, like, I'm heavy into like storytelling, like true storytelling. The type of shit like that you just may want to go to the library and just peep, like, just read some good shit every once in a while. Like, I'm like a big thing on storytelling because it's like you living in that same situation that they was in before. Like, they telling you all the stuff that was going down. You know, like, that's why I like about like certain rappers nowadays. Like, they won't hesitate or won't be scared of saying anything because they keep it real. You know, especially rappers nowadays, man. It's just like, ugh. It's like niggas doing too much. Just for anything, for clout, money, like all that shit ain't worth it at the end of the day. Like, it's not worth it losing your character. Cause you doing all that shit, man, just to get promotion. Like, I just don't see that shit no other way. It's just like, why you want to do this? Like, why? Like, even now, man, like, shit is just like terrible. Like, motherfuckers getting killed left and right, man. Like, it's just sad. It seemed like it seemed like the last, what, 10, 15 years, like, more rappers getting killed than every other artist in different genres and shit. Compared to the 90s and the early 2000s. Motherfuckers was getting killed off like that. But sometimes, like, to me, like, I'm like more like a conspiracy theorist type shit, because sometimes there'll be more behind some murder or some shit like that, especially somebody I fuck with, like Pac, Big, all those rappers that get killed off in their prime. Like, sometimes it would be deeper than what people make it seem like. Ooh, shit. Damn, it's Jack Daniels. Ooh. Yeah, but yeah, cause I just I hate shit like that. Like, you never see or hear about anybody like, you know, like a type of person like Paul McCartney or some shit get killed off in their prime or whatever. You don't hear nothing about that, and that man's still living. Like, you don't hear shit like that. But when motherfuckers are like damn near 20, ain't even reached 21 yet, and just getting killed off so soon, just when they about to hit their peak. Like, and I always be seeing that shit on like some people, man. Like, and I just hate to see that shit sometimes, man. Like, that's a society that we live in. Like, as soon as they get popping, like, either motherfuckers get jealous or they just ready to plot to kill. Like, and I can't stand shit like that sometimes. I really don't. Cause then, like, cause people who be doing shit like that, I have no respect for shit like that. Like, I don't have respect for people that be doing stuff like that, cause there's money out there. You just can't sit there and hate on the next motherfucker who got, that got shit popping. Cause me, I never been the one that just hate on somebody for their success or anything. Cause like I said, I know most people that I know that I occasionally talk to, like, I be seeing them doing, like, promoting their music and all that stuff, and I don't be hating on that shit, like, at all. Cause, I'm willing to support them no matter what. Like ain't just no hate thing or whatever. Like that's what motherfuckers have to start to realize. Like I said, there's money out there for you to be doing. You know, it's like money comes and money goes. Like it won't be staying in one place. You know, you gotta get yours as much as you can. Like whenever you can, cause you only live one life in this world. You know, and it's never the time to be hating on somebody off their success. You know, cause I don't like to see shit like that, man. Like I really don't. You know, cause like especially in them days, man, it was rarely like that at times. Cause most of the time it would be over some street shit, like shit you may never know about, that the public don't want to know about. Like that's why most times when I read certain rappers and all that stuff, man, like I just look deep. I do my research, you know, and see what's true or what not. Cause you know you may never know what that person is going through. Like you may never know what that person did just to get themselves in that same situation. Cause you know, damn, and my legs straight fell asleep. Um, yeah, cause like I remember like when I used to I remember when I was like 10. You know, I remember I used to listen to like when the Jay-Z and Nas thing happened, it was so crazy at that time, man. It was like the next best. It was like the next best thing. You know, when that happened, cause I was all into it when that shit happened. Like, like you had to be there to witness all that shit from going down. Like, you know, cause when that Jay-Z and Nas thing happened, like to me at that time, like it's almost like to me it came out of nowhere. Cause I'm just like, why are they beefing? Like, I was into that shit so heavily, like, and I didn't fully understand why until like later on. You know that Jay that Jay had wanted Nas to do some song, but he had never came through. So then I think like later on he ended up sampling his voice on Dead Presidents, and to me that's when I really feel like that's how that shit started between them two. But you know things kind of cooled off a little afterwards, up until like what 98, 99. You know, they was throwing shots here and there, but it wasn't up until like 2001 that shit just blew up when Hove came out with Takeover. Like, I remember when I first heard that shit in the radio, I was like, go. It was just like out of nowhere type shit, man. Like, and then he came for Nas's neck at that time. Like, it was just like one of them. It was like one of them songs like you can't even forget. Like he was just going at him, and you know, and of course Nas came back with Ether, and boy, I remember when that joint came out, man. Like it's like Nas. To me, Nas, I feel like Nas won that shit after that. Like after Ether come out, it was just like the end of the story. Like it was the end. Like that shit was just Like I can't even describe it. Like that to me, hip hop. Like even when them two feuded, like it would never got that serious to where, you know, like other like their camps or either one of them get killed or anything like that. It was straight lyrical beef, pretty much. You know, like that's why I always been got my respect for those two, man, because they never took it that far. I mean, if that was the case at that time, man, it would have been hip hop would have been done for after that, straight up. It's bad enough we lost Big and Pac around like before then, but if that shit would have happened between Jay and Nas, like that would have been the end of hip hop. Period. You know, cause like I remember growing up listening to stuff like that, man. Like I was like heavy into shit like that, especially when I listened to niggas in New York. Like it almost make you feel like you was actually living up there. Like most of the rappers I knew that was like, you know, in New York, like that's when like East Coast damn near took over around that time period, like in the early 2000s, you know. And then, like I said, in the 90s, of course, you had Bad Boy and all that stuff. Then Puff came out with that shiny suit era. And I never followed that shit. I was just like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, I never understood that shit, man. But that was Puff, though. That man flamboyant like that. Like, you know, and I remember DMX. God rest his soul, man. Like, man, I tell you, like, when Get At Me Dog came out, like that shit was like wildfire. Straight wildfire, man. Like that to me, that was like the best shit he ever came out with at that time, cause it feel like at that time hip hop needed a change, cause cause everybody they was starting to get tired with that mainstream flamboyant type lifestyle type thing around that time. So when DMX came over, it's just like a whole wildfire just stormed through. Like everything changed after that shit. You know, and I remember when he had passed, and I'll never forget it. Saddest day of my life, man. I will never forget that shit, man. But I remember when I was listening to his debut album, is Dark and Hell is Hot. Like I really fuck with it. Like it's like a solid classic album. Like I recommend to any fan, any hip hop fan, listen to that shit. Like you, like especially the intro. Like the intro of that album is like sets off the mood right there. That's when shit gonna get real throughout the whole album. Like I'm telling you. Like, and I remember I first heard it when I was playing Def Jam Vendetta, which is my shit, by the way. And you know, I immediately got like hypnotized listening to it. Like I could literally listen to that shit over and over again. You know. And like that intro, like it sets off the dark mood of the whole album. Like you gotta listen to it. Like it's like that. It's really like that, man. You know, and then in Def Jam at that time you had X, Hove, Method of Red, and who else? Ja Rule, of course. Like I always felt like Def Jam was that label. Like in all some serious shit. Like they had the roster that they had at the time. Oh, and I can't forget LL. Can't forget LL Cool J. Can't forget him. Like You know, they had the roster that they had at that time, and like to me, it literally took over from like what 98, 99, somewhere around there to like 2003, I should say. Because after that, they was starting to get whack afterwards. But early on, Def Jam was that label to me. Like, they had like an all-star roster at that time, man. Like, that shit couldn't be touched. You know, especially when you had Rockefeller, Rough Riders, Murder Inc. Like, those were like the three main labels that was under Def Jam. Like, like if you were to tell me to choose a label, it'd probably be Rockefeller. Cause I always felt like I've been listening to more Rockefeller stuff than any other label at that time. Like Rockefeller was that label too. Cause you know they had, like I said, they had a roster, man. Like you had Hove, Memphis Bleak, Beanie, Freeway, Young Gun, State Property, all those cats, man. Like, and I can't forget Dipset. Like, I'm a big Dipset fan to the death of me. Like, you know, I'm a big Dipset fan. Like, I remember when I was like in my junior year in high school. I remember I copped their first album, Diplomatic Immunity. And to me, that's like my top 5 albums of all time. And I tell you, man, like early on, I was like a Dipset fan since like Dipset Anthem first came out in '03. So I've been rocking with Dipset like since then, like particularly in high school. Like I tell you, man, like Dipset was that crew too, man. Like I fucks with them, cause, and then you know, and I always felt like the Diplomats had like that fashion sense to them, man. Like when I was in high school at that time, when Jim Jones had everybody rocking like these like rock star type outfits like Ed Hardy and all that shit. And I used to wanna, and I remember he used to have the iced out skull belt with the chain hanging, and I used to want that shit so bad. I used to want to rock that shit so bad, man. Like I wish I had me one of them joints at that time. I would have been styling on motherfuckers with that shit. And I remember the BB Simons. I used to want those too. Like that shit was crazy back then, man. Like that's why I really feel like Dipset had that impact in me when I was at high school, especially in 10th grade. Like that's when I really started listening to them. You know, like Dipset was that crew, man. Like for real. And you know, and out of all the people that was in that shit, I always felt like Joel Santana, he could have had a run. Like no bullshit. Like I always felt like he was like the underrated out of all of them. Cause you know the man had the look, the charisma, the lyrics, all that shit. He could have had a run. Like to be honest, man, he probably would have been like where Wayne is right now. You know. Cause Joel Santana, I always thought he was like the one that got next. You know, cause after a while, cause I remember the last 2 albums he had, it was solid too. You know, cause I fuck with them. Like even though I haven't actually listened to them, but I know Like I listened to some of them, like they were pretty solid, you know. But Santana, I always thought he was that one who got next. But I don't know what happened afterwards. Cause I was been hearing he got lazy and all that stuff. Like the last thing I heard from the last thing I ever heard from him was like when he did that. I think it was God Willing that he did almost damn near a decade ago, and I haven't even listened to that yet. But I always feel like he got next though. He could have had a run at that time, like especially with Wayne at the time. Can't feel my face. Like that would have been the shit right there, man. For real. And then another thing I wanted to add to that I completely forgot while I was mentioning Rockefeller, Rough Riders, and Murder Inc. And I didn't realize up until like a few years ago that um it was Jay-Z, DMX, and Ja Rule was in a group together. And I didn't know this shit until like years ago. But at the same time, especially at their prime, it made sense. Because they literally took over hip hop around 98, 99. Like when I first heard about that shit, man, I was like, dog, like, are you fucking serious? Like, I would have just imagined how much impact that shit would have had if they would have did a whole album together. Like, and I always used to think that shit every time, man. Like, they should have made that shit happen. Of course, egos got in the way, so that just put a whole end to that shit right there. But that's just like the biggest what if ever, like, you know. But at the same time, you may never know if they got some unreleased stuff in the vault, which I hope they do. Cause that shit to me made sense. Cause like I said, them three took over hip hop at that time, man. Like for real. Yeah, cause like to me, like the early 2000s was the shit for me, man. Like, you know, like to me everything made sense. Like from like 2000 to 2003 was like that era for me. So, and I remember 2003 came around. You know, of course you had 50 Cent, and I think 50 in my top five too. You know, cause 50, when I heard Get Rich or Die Trying, like when, hold on, when 50 first came out, like that shit, especially when the album came out, like that shit was like blew over like a fucking wildfire, just swept across the nation. Like that's how much of an impact that shit had when Get Rich or Die Trying came out. Like 50 was everywhere that year. Like 2003 was his year. Like I'm telling you, like niggas had to be there for that shit, man. Like for real. like like niggas had to be there for that shit at that time, man. Cause I wish I had to see him perform and that shit, man. Like that would have made my fucking life, man. Just to witness all that shit from going down, man. I was like 12 when that shit came out. Like Get Rich or Die Trying, that's like a classic album. Like, and that's like my top one. That's like my top five, like number one albums of all time. Cause you know, especially at that time, you had like Ja Rule, and he was beefing with him at the time, man. Like it's almost seemed like his career was just over after that. Like he was just really on that man's neck after that shit. Like I remember I listened to the whole album on the radio. And they used to play that shit like every weekend. Like that's how crazy that shit was. Like they would play that shit literally every weekend. Back when I was living in Northern Virginia at the time. They used to air. They used to wear that album out. You feel me? Like they used to wear that shit out. Like I tell you, man. Like I was so glad I was there to see all and witness all that shit happening, man. Cause like 50 took over that shit. He really did. And you know, and of course you had G Unit who came out with Bag of Mercy at that time. That was pretty solid too, you know. But to me, Get Rich or Die Trying, that was the album to me. Like one of my favorite songs out of that shit was Mini Man to this day. Like I would literally have that shit on repeat. Like I could play that shit like 100 times and I wouldn't even give a shit. Like to me, that's where I really got attracted to the whole album. Like that's what really got me. Like Many Man, that was my shit, man. Like forever. Like back then, I remember I used to try to catch that shit on the radio sometimes. And back when we were still using cassette tapes, you gotta make sure them bitches was like empty, like clear, you know. And I remember I used to had to put the cassette on the radio player, and once and I would wait for hours for them to play that shit. And when they do, or at least when they play half of it, I just record that shit. Oh man, I tell you, I'm glad those days are over with though, man. But that shit was a memory for real. Like that's some shit I'll never forget. And I'm just telling y'all my experience, like how I was growing up on hip hop and all that stuff. Like especially from that time, man. Like to me, like everything made sense. And like I said, man, I always felt like from '98 to 2003 was like the best solid years for hip hop at that time. But afterwards, it feel like it got changed after that. Like it just got weird after that shit. Cause even though at the time you had people like, T.I., Fat Joe, Kanye just came out with College Dropout, which is one of my favorite albums too. Like I literally could relate to that. But I'll discuss that later. Yeah, but it seemed like around '04 and onwards, it just got, like what happened? And it was up until like years later, like around '07. Like when I was in high school and shit, like I said, I was listening to Dipset and Wayne. Like, and I remember I told my fiance, like, Wayne has got me through my high school years. Like when I first heard Drought 3, like even though I've been hearing Wayne since the Hot Boy days, like when Cash Money like then they came out in mainstream, like when it was like out there. But it didn't take until like the Carter came out, that's when it really got popping. But when I first heard Drought 3, and to me that's like my favorite mixtape of all time. Drought 3. Like Drought 3, that was like, to me that was like the best shit ever heard. Like I could listen to that whole joint over and over again, especially if it's like chopped and screwed. I would listen to that shit all day with no skips. Like even though there's certain songs I could do without, but but just the way he was flowing, like in every instrumental that came out at that time, man, like he did that shit so flawlessly. Like even at that time, Wayne, like once I started listening to his lyrics, I understood what like punchlines or wordplay really meant. Like I remember one song he was like missing me like school days, some shit like that. Like that's when I really realized like what punchlines and wordplay really was. You know, that's when I really got into him and his music. And it's like he got me through them years though. Like everybody and their mama was listening to Wayne. You know, even though, and I will say this, like I was more of a fan of his mixtapes, especially some of the early ones, like Dedication 2, Drought 3, um, and Dedication 3, I would say it was pretty solid though. I can't front. I would listen to that shit in all honesty. Like that was probably the only three I would listen to. That's probably like the only three mixtapes I would listen to from him. And like I even was listening to some of his older stuff when he was on Squad Up, like from 2002 2003. Like they were pretty solid too. You know, but it didn't take me till when I listened to like his solo mixtapes, like Trial 3 and them, like that set it off for me. Like that's why I was listening to every mixtape he ever made, like from that era. You know, like yeah, cause the way I always thought, like even though people could say the shit, bleh, people could say this, damn, people could say the shit they want to about Wayne. Like, but they can't sit there and act like, you know, he didn't influence everybody out here now. Like, you know, like I said, I could listen to some of his like older stuff now. I can't listen to some of his new shit now. And like, there's certain songs like I remember I listened to the Funeral tape that he had out. I thought it was pretty good. Like it's almost seemed like it was like he was starting, you know, trying to bring back the old Wayne I used to listen to back in high school. There's certain songs that be like that, you know. But I thought it was solid too. The rest of the ones I was just like, I was just not feeling with. Like I'm not a big fan of his albums either. Like mostly just his mixtapes, nothing more. Not even Carter 3. You know. But I was listening to him like heavily back when I was like in high school and shit. You know. Yeah, then of course Kanye. You know, I was starting to listen to him around that time too when Graduation came out. Cause I remember when he had that sales thing with 50 at that time, man. Like, I almost thought 50 was gonna have the upper hand, but Kanye, he came out swinging, outselling him like, what was it, like 500 copies of Graduation? You know, and like I said, at that time, I was starting to listen to him heavily. Like even though even my fiance and her mom, like, even though they hate Kanye, but Like, I'm a big fan of his. Like, I really am. Like, ever since Through the Wire first came out. Like, that's how long I've been listening to him. You know? Because, like, I got, like, to me, man, like, Kanye is, especially most of his, like, music and stuff, his albums is, like, straight masterpieces. Like, him is, like, a different breed that what hip-hop needed at that time. It was like everybody could talk about, oh, I shoot this, I got this. Like, as soon as he stepped foot with like Graduation and 808s, all that shit changed. Like, he gave that change what hip hop definitely needed at that time. Cause I'm pretty sure damn near everybody was getting tired of hearing the same old shit over the last 20 years. Cause like, and then half of the rappers nowadays, man, even then at them times, like, nobody was living like that, like drugged in and shooting people and all that stuff. So like, Graduation really changed all that. Like, even when he did 808s and Heartbreaks, I fuck with that album too. Like, that's a pretty solid album. Like, and like I said, and then again, man, it's influential. Like, because of that album, like, everybody and their mama started singing. Like, everybody and their mama using auto-tune, like, and all that stuff. Cause especially at that time, man, when that joint came out, when everybody was using auto-tune around 07, 08, like, that shit was starting to get tiring. It was starting to become oversaturated to the point where I could literally hear everybody using that bitch every damn song, like, throughout that whole era. But you know, I always they kind of pull that shit off more, you know, than anybody else that I've been listening to. You know, cause like 808s, that's like a real good album. Like, I fucks with it. You know, and just and then like, especially now, it's almost seems like I could relate to that album, man. Like, especially when I'm going through, you know, having my mom dealing with this kidney situation and all that stuff. It's like, you can't feel nothing than feel pain throughout that whole album. It's like you actually living through it. And that's how I feel every time when I listen to the album. Like, it's a real good album. You know, like Kanye, like I said, man, Kanye, like, he's that guy. Like, everybody can say all the shit they want to about him. Like, even though I don't condone none of his shit he be doing nowadays, but, you know, they can't sit there and say that man had an impact on everything he touches. You know, like, he's the reason why, like, all these rappers and such expressing how they really feel, like, especially using autotune. Like, everybody and their mama is like using that shit and then talking about the pain and suffering they went through. You know, like, even though there was plenty of people was talking about that same subject before, but like, he took it there. You know, that's why I'm always gonna be a Kanye fan no matter what. Because, you know, like, Kanye, he's like a masterpiece of his own. Like, he knows how to make shit perfect. That's why it takes him so long to, like, make a whole album. Like, just take his time and make it perfect. Like, he don't be rushing shit like half of everybody else is doing nowadays. You know, he just want to make shit perfect. Like, that's what I like about some of his music. Like, he just takes time with his shit. You know, and like my top, like most of his albums, like I really could fuck with. Like, I could probably list them all if I have to. Like, number one is Dark Fantasy. Like, that's probably like the only album of his that I could listen to straight with no skips. you know, my beautiful dark wait, I won't say Dark Fantasy. That's it. Yeah, but like that's a good album though. It's a whole classic. A whole classic album, man. Like, I fucks with it. Like, I could listen to that shit with no skips. And then number two would be Yeezus. Like, I don't know why I like the album so much. But it, like I said, man, like he ex- experiment on like certain genres, on music genres. Like, when I remember when On Sight came out, like it was almost kind of hip hop ish, but it was just like when he had did Stronger on Graduation. That's almost how it sounded like. Like, he just twist things up a notch. Like, that's a good album too. Like, and then number three. I think number three would be College Dropout. And I feel like with that title of that album, I feel like I could relate to that shit. Like, I could relate to some of the stuff that he was talking about, like religion, dealing with family, all that stuff he was talking about on that album. Like, I could damn near relate to that, because like, especially if you listen to the album at its entirely, it's like you instantly can relate to all that shit, you know. And then number four, number four, 808s, of course. 808s would be my number four joint. Like, none of this shit ain't gotta be in particular order, but that's probably like one of my favorite Kanye albums is 808. And I think number five will probably be Late Registration. And I would put this on my last one because, like I said, I ain't gonna knock it. Like, it's a good album, but it's like certain songs I could just go out with. Like, it's just not all that to me. Like, it's not even like my top five. Like, I'm just ranking it from highest to low. And damn, I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, cause Late Registration, man. Like I said, it's a good album, but it's like certain songs I could deal without. Like, it ain't gotta be in a particular order. Like, I'm just, ranking them from highest to low. Like, in the rest of his albums, like, the honorable mention where I'll put somewhere between Yeezus and what's that shit? Damn, somewhere between, like, right after Yeezus will be my life, the life of Pablo. That's a pretty good album too. Like, I like that album. I ain't gonna front. That is pretty solid too. Like, it's you know, it's certain things like I could talk about and all that stuff, man. Like I basically have a top five with everything. Like my top five would be Pac, Big, Hove, Wayne, and who else I put on that list? Hold on. See. Pac, Big, Hove, yeah, 50. Gotta put 50 on there. Like those are the people I could listen to like every other day, like every day. You know. But compared, compared to hip hop nowadays, man, like there's a select few I could fuck with, you know. But this certain group in particular that literally got my attention that somebody put me on is none other than Griselda. Like when I first heard of Griselda, I remember my boy Sean. He had put me on to this dude West Side Gun, and I remember I started listening to his tape. I forgot what was the first song I ever listened to him, but all I know is like one of his songs, man. I was just like, where has this shit been all my life? Like it's like I swear, Griselda is like the best shit out right now. Like shout outs to Westside Gun, Conway, Benny, like, like them niggas is for real. Like when I first heard this shit, man, it's like, dog, where have they been all this time? Cause especially the music that they had around this time, man, like this is the shit I've been looking for years. Like, where has this been in my life? Like, it's like these niggas just came out of nowhere and just dropping shit, man. Like, especially Gun, like he's my favorite. Westside Gun is like my favorite because he, like, there's no way to describe that man. Like, he's just in his own vibe. Like, he, like, in his own, like, class. Like, he does what he want to do. Like, he don't give a fuck. Like, that's what I like about Gun. Yeah, man, because, like, especially listen to their music, man, it's like that grittiness, that boom bap, man. Like, it's like something I've been searching for all this time. And I was glad my boy put me on in that shit, man, because if I didn't hear about Griselda, like, I wouldn't even bother to listen to anything else that's out right now. That's the type of motherfucker I am. Like, I'm picky on, like, whoever I listen to. Like, that's probably, like, the only section of people I will, like, listen to, like, right now. Like I said, this is, like, a select few I fuck with, like, Pop Smoke. And I didn't even get to him until, like, after he died or whatever. God rest his soul, too. Like, and I remember I first heard about him. This is when, like a month before he died, that he ended up taking some Rolls Royce out of California or whatever, and drove that shit all the way to New York. And I was like, damn. And he was a loc too. So I'm just like, you just made shit worse for yourself. Because I heard there was like a couple people that was looking for him over that shit. So that's why they killed him the way he did, supposedly. But, you know, Pop Smoke, like, he could have been the next big thing, too. Like, he could have been the next big thing. Like, he had the charisma, the voice, all that shit. And I was like, damn, that man was only 20 when he passed. Like, I didn't even start listening to him, like, after he died or whatever. So, like, Like his music pretty solid. Like, I only listen to his mixtapes, cause especially now when people like certain labels always um make like random shit off of dead people, whatever. It just don't even sound right. Like from the beats to the features that they be putting on there. I was like, who the fuck even paired him with this motherfucker? Like that's why I don't like listen to like, you know, to I can't pronounce the word, but I don't like to like listen to people's stuff after they die and the labels just do whatever the fuck they want to do just to make money off of them. And like that's why I don't like listen to stuff like that, because they become trash every once in a while. And I hate that shit, man. I hate it. So yeah, so it was Griselda, Pop Smoke, and who else? And I think that's it basically. Like it's only like a select few. Like it's gotta be like a certain. It's like now I don't even have a certain like a favorite artist to listen to now. Like it's only like a song that I could fuck with now that I could listen to on a regular basis. Cause most of these niggas they be having out nowadays just ain't moving me. Pause. Like it's just not. That's why I don't get into this like this generation now, man. Especially in hip hop, man. It's just starting to become trash afterwards. Cause every once in a while, man, like whenever I just be looking at these niggas and just listen to their music and the shit they be doing, this just be like, how niggas could move to this shit. Like, and I remember I was listening to Playboy Cardi. I was listening to like 2 of his songs on Whole Lotta Red, and he was just speaking a whole bunch of gibberish. I was like, what the fuck did I just listen to? Like that was my whole thing the whole time. Now I think I might have listened to the whole album, and all that man is rapping about is nothing but bullshit. Just rapping gibberish. I was like, what the fuck is he saying? It's like, how niggas even like this cat? Like, how? So I was like, y'all niggas is weird. Like it's just so trash nowadays, man. Like I can't even. Like that's why I don't even listen to music nowadays like that, man. Like I said, it's certain songs. Like over the last decade, like it's certain songs I could listen to, but it's just like, what the fuck? Like how y'all grew to this shit? And another thing I was gonna mention too, that I ain't gonna forget, is Lil B. Now if y'all heard of Lil B, the bass guy, you know what I'm talking about. Like I remember I listened to him one day, and this is when I was living with a certain somebody that I ain't gonna mention, and he had shown me a video of him on YouTube. I forgot what song it was. I don't know if it was the Justin Bieber song that he made, but I was just sitting there like, what the fuck is he listening to? Like, what is this? And I remember Lil B from the Pack when they had did that song Vans. Got my Vans on, but they lit like sneakers. And I remember that shit. And I didn't know he was in that shit until like right after. And then I listened to some of his songs. Next thing I know, I was hooked. Like, I don't know what got me listening to him on a regular basis, but like, I tell you, man, like, if you would have told me this shit about like 12 years ago, I'd be like, what the fuck is you talking about? But like now, Lil B, man, like I could listen to this shit like every day. Like I would just listen to this shit about like 2 weeks ago. Like I got a whole playlist of his songs, like his older songs on YouTube and shit. And I tell you, man, like Lil B, he got some lyrics too, like people be sleeping on. And I remember one of my homeboys, like we was at work, we was like talking about him. And one of the songs he did, he had said, I'm a lesbian nigga, I'll be down with the strap. I'm a lesbian nigga, I'll be down with the strap. I remember when I first heard that shit, and I used to listen to that song so many times, but I never caught on to that shit until he said it. And then when I had to replay that shit, I'm like, that is so fire. I was like, this is fire right here. Like, and I never knew Lil B was like punchlining like that. I was like, go. Like, I wish he did more shit like that. Which he do every now and then when he wants to, you know. But I always had felt like Lil B had like an influence and impact of everybody doing some weird shit. Especially when he came out with that album, I'm Gay or whatever. I was like, oh no. It's like, he can't come out with that shit, man. I remember when I first heard about that shit, I was like, this nigga about to get his ass whooped. Or even worse. As I tell you, if this was like, 95? If he came out with that shit, his career would have been nowhere after that. They wouldn't even accept him like that. But now, it's like motherfuckers, they don't care. Like, you want to be gay, but his way of the word gay is like happy. That's why he put the parentheses, I'm happy, like right next to the word. So I was like, that kind of makes sense. Because I was like, boy, this was like early on, your career would have been over after that. Straight up. Shoot. Because I was like, I don't know how you pulled that shit off, man. And then they was talking about he was receiving death threats and all that shit, man. I was like, I believe that. Because like I said, man, this was like early on, like in the 90s or some shit, his career would have been over. They would even accept him. Because he would have went nowhere after that shit. But I always felt like Lil B paved the way for niggas to do some weird shit like that. And there's no denying that shit, especially how motherfuckers rap nowadays. I always felt like all that shit belonged to him. And I'm not capping when I say this shit. Like, I'm telling you, man, Lil B, like, he's influential for sure. Because he paid him and Soulja Boy, like, he paved the way for every motherfucker that just be saying some weird shit. And just talking about nothing. But I still fuck with his music though. I can't even front. So yeah, man. But that's some wild shit though, man. It's really wild. Damn, I'm tired as fuck and I'm hungry. So, you know, I'm gonna wrap this up for now or whatever, because I'm tired. I had a long day at work, obviously, especially how my voice sounding right now. Like, I feel like I just came doing this podcast unprepared and shit. So, forgive me, y'all. So, you know, until I come up with the next subject, which I hopefully will be by next week, once I get everything edited up and everything. So, yeah, y'all know what to do, man. Y'all can follow me on Keeping Up with Teezy Podcast on Facebook and Instagram, and of course on YouTube, Spotify, and Anchor. If you ain't got it already, if you ain't subscribed already. So if you listen to this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. And I definitely needed this break too, man, because I didn't know what the hell I was going to talk about and all that stuff. So, yeah, man, I got to get up out of here, man. I'm tired. I'm ready to go. So long, my peoples. So until then, peace.